Go.
Go ahead, Shalon.
Can I go? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What does it mean to be an Asian American? We have been asking ourselves this question for over a century now. And today, as we Asian Americans face two viruses, COVID-19.
Disable.
Is there anything wrong?
No, go ahead.
Okay, keep going.
Questions for over a century. And today, as we Asian Americans face two viruses, COVID-19 and the virus of racism and xenophobia, that question becomes even more relevant. Yesterday, in a New York Times interview about the PBS series Asian Americans, the actor Daniel Day Kim said, "We don't want to be speaking just to ourselves. What's really important is to have this history brought out to the general population so that people who have no idea of what our contributions might be or have been finally understand that they are significant and they are real. I would hope that it's a celebration of what it means to be an American." So let's celebrate today, not exactly in a sense of a social gathering, exactly, but celebrate in the sense of honoring and saluting. So please join me as I dedicate this evening to the following. One, to the incredible dedication and sacrifice of our Asian American brothers and sisters in the front lines of healthcare and essential services. Two, to the relentless effort and resilience of our peoples, our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and those that came before them, so that we can carve out our place in American society. Three, to all our inspired teachers and teacher activists like our speaker, Jessica Tang, who lead and educate us and our children. Four, to the voices of our youth like Elena, Selena, Adrian, and Ronnie, who write with artistry and speak with courage tonight. Finally, from a very selfish point of view, I would like to introduce my fellow steering committee members of the Brookline Asian American Family Network. We have tonight Karen, who is our latest steering committee member, joined us about a year and a half ago. She is kind of our mother, a mother hen. And then Linda Chinson-Louis, has been with BAAFN for a very long time. I don't know what I would do without Linda because she is the most detail-oriented, artistic person. Anything I give her comes out looking 200 times better than ever. Third, we have Chris Chanya-Sulkit, who can't join us tonight. A very important member of our group, full of energy. Unfortunately, Chris had a health issue several weeks ago, and she is recuperating, but she is with us, in spirit at least, and maybe if not, in the public. Then we have Alicia Hsu. Now, about 6 months ago, I told my fellow steering committee members that, getting close to 70, I was having a lot of trouble trying to express myself, write, and read. So I asked them if they would be kind enough to take on a more active role in the presentation of this award ceremony. And so Alicia will be presenting the award winners. And there's nothing like the sensitivity and the intelligence of a teacher like Alicia to bring all that to light. And then finally, I would like to pass on the microphone to Chi Wu. She's our leader, although she never wants a title. She has been the lifeblood of BAAFN since close to 10 years, I believe, that we are in existence. And I very proudly introduce to you Chi Wu, who will be taking on from here. Chi, please go ahead.
Thank you, Shulan. Thank you for those wonderful opening remarks and for all the work you're doing on this wonderful event. So before my remarks, a few housekeeping items. This event is being recorded. It's also being live streamed by the Brookline Interactive Group. So thank you so much for your help on this. Just a reminder that if you're a panelist, please mute your microphone until you're ready to speak. And then for the participants, just to let you know, today's presentation by Jessica Tang, due to timing conflicts, it had to be recorded. So unfortunately, we will not have a Q&A with Jessica Tang. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Brookline Asian American Family Network, as Shulan said, we've been around for about 10 years. Our mission is to support the Asian and Asian American students and their families in the Brookline school system. We are probably best known for the annual Lunar New Year event we put on every year. Some of you may have been to that. We've put on a number of other events, such as not only this annual Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month event, but special events on Asian American mental health issues and college admissions and such. We mostly communicate through a listserv. If you are not on the BAAFN listserv and interested in joining, I've put information in the chat box on contacting us to be added. There's also a Facebook group that you can request to be added to. We also engage in advocacy. For example, some of the issues we focused on over the years are increasing the number of Asian American teachers and staff in the Brookline schools, and supporting the Mandarin in the World Languages program, and also trying to introduce Asian American specific elements in the anti-bullying curriculum, which obviously right now is of very critical importance given what's going on. Occasionally we get involved representing the Asian American community in other town-related issues. For example, we are on the town census committee, and as a totally off-topic and irrelevant piece of information, please fill out your census forms if you haven't already. You can do it online. It's really easy. It takes 10 minutes. Okay. And so this is the event we have been doing for the last 5 years as part of our Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month event. The essay contest was created 5 years ago by former BAAFN Steering Committee member Teresa Cheng, who ran it for a couple of years before she moved out to the West Coast, very sadly for us. But fortunately for us, Shulan Cheng, with her wonderful energy and enthusiasm, immediately volunteered to take it up. And we have been the beneficiaries of her hard work, her passion, just everything she brings to the table as one of the world's best volunteers. So thank you, Shulan. We are grateful for what you do here down to our toes. And I also wanted to thank our partner in collaboration, the Brookline Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, and Caitlin Starr. I also wanted to thank the sponsors in the event who are listed on the slide that you're seeing. And a special thanks to today's Zoom support, my husband, Professor Andrew Leong. So the essays this year, I have actually read them. They are all wonderful. I don't know how the judges were able to pick. They must have had a very tough time. Just to thank the judges as well. Alicia Shu, who's going to be presenting the awards. Chris Chenyasakit, who Shulan mentioned earlier as a steering committee member. John Hodgman, Minnie Kalori, John Lee, Casey Neo-Miller, and Caitlin Starr. So thank you to the judges. Just to let you know that each of the winners will be receiving a cash award, and every participant will be getting, and the other participants will be getting a Brookline Booksmith gift card. So now I'm going to turn it over to Alicia to talk about the theme of the awards and introduce the awardees.
Hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome. My name is Alicia Shu, and I am one of the judges of the 2020 Asian American Student Essay Contest. It is an honor to be with you today during Asian Pacific American Heritage Month in a space, though virtual, filled with energy, talent, and the power that comes with all of our individual and collective stories. To each of the students, courageous and vulnerable, thoughtful and truthful, who took the time and the risk to write and submit an essay, you have given voice to what it means to be Asian American, and we honor all of you tonight. This year, we judges read and discussed your writing from our homes through pandemic lenses we've never worn before. We were moved by your frank and eloquent insight, touched by stories that sometimes resonated in all too familiar ways, and we're most mindful of the ways in which your narratives sustain and propel our community, especially today. Thank you for embracing the messy, the complicated, and the unresolved. Thank you for leading us forward. And now it is my honor to introduce to you the recipient of this year's Creativity Award, Selena Yu. Selena is currently a junior at Brookline High School and a graduate of the Driscoll School. She also attended St. Mary of the Assumption, Dwight International School of Seoul, and the Lawrence School. That's a lot of lucky schools. Selena enjoys reading books and putting together puzzles. At home these past weeks, Selena has grown to appreciate her family more as they spend more time together, bonding over fun activities. Selena was surprised to discover in the writing of her essay entitled My Puzzle Pieces, how proud she is to be Korean. She found it wonderful to reflect on all that she loves about Korean culture. We, in turn, are proud to get a glimpse of Selena's evolving and beautiful jigsaw journey. Congratulations, Selena, and thank you for telling your story.
Thank you. Do I start reading? Okay. So, my puzzle pieces. A pink cow, dancing strawberries across a cotton candy bridge, Winnie the Pooh simplified version, and a giant red gummy bear with a tiny red balloon. Jigsaw puzzles, classified as weird, have always been my favorite pastime activity. The satisfying click of the last piece and the bizarre puzzle proudly displayed in front of me makes me feel like the smartest person in the world for about 2 seconds. Of course, my intellectual prowess limits me to puzzles with 45 to 67 pieces. The true beauty of each seemingly strange puzzle is when I can see the vital clue, the piece that shows the whole. A branch tilted left with a blue smudge of sky at the top and a squirrel's tail to the right, or the curvature of the red balloon and the pinky finger reaching up towards it. Direction, flow, connection. For 16 years, 2 puzzle pieces confused me because there was no direction, flow, or connection. Instead, they were perfectly divided, smoothed into little squares forced light years apart so that they would never click. It was the only puzzle I never wanted to complete. To me, I had 2 distinct identities. Crisp fall and reddened noses meant Selena, and sticky summer nights with hot breezes meant Soyeon. But I made mistakes. I found myself wearing half-tucked-in shirts and long paddings as Selena, and forgetting to change out of sports shorts and faded flip-flops as Soyeon. The more I tried to separate Korean and American, the more I was reminded that I was Korean American. This angered me. Why couldn't I shift seamlessly between 2 characters? It ruined my puzzle because it just didn't make sense. How could I eat red bean duck with banana milk in Nike joggers while watching Iron Man for the umpteenth time? As I grew older, the puzzle pieces started straining together and colliding at the worst times. In 8th grade, my aunt started buying me Korean makeup. Rosy pink blushes, soft brown eye pencils, pale foundation, and coral lip gloss. This was probably due to her intense fear that I would live upon my desire to wear blue glittery eyeshadow to school one day. I remember muttering how I would wear it in Korea, avoiding my aunt's piercing eyes as she asked me why. Nervously laughing it off, I quickly explained that I was tired in the mornings and didn't have the energy to put it on. I pretended not to notice her pursed lips and furrowed eyebrows as she turned away. Later that night, I stuck to the bathroom with an armful of Korean and American makeup and did half my face with Korean makeup and half my face with American. I looked horrendous, but I loved it. I loved how equal it was, but how I could control how distinct they were. Yet I also felt fear. A deep-rooted part of me felt tearing guilt at how I was so scared to let them interact. I wish I could say there was that moment where I had a revelation that I loved being Korean American and I wanted to mix the two puzzle pieces. No, it was gradual. I first grudgingly started packing my Korea-only clothes back to America just to find that they were new and it was a waste of space to only wear them in summer. Then I was wearing platform sneakers with leggings, eating fried chicken with kimchi jjigae, and trying see-through bangs and failing to curl them. Tip: don't wait till they start smelling like burnt toast. These little things accumulated, and I started to resist them less. I'd find myself subconsciously reaching for a glass of milk and a plate of songpyeon and realize, but still continue, hesitating but not stopping. Over time, I gained more confidence in my ability to fit together the puzzle without breaking it apart. I broke down this thick wall of fear and understood that it would always be weird and a little bit funny, but it was also right. It did fit. My whole life, I had been fitting puzzles side by side, perfectly, evenly, click. These two puzzle pieces sometimes fit neatly, and other times squish and pull and poke into each other. It all messily works. I am not complete yet. I still hesitate. But slowly, through my life, I will build a beautiful puzzle through the connection of two different, perfect, but not always equal, puzzle pieces that comprise the one unified me. Thank you.
Thank you, Selena. On behalf of BAAFN and the town of Brookline, we would like to present Selena Yu with the 2020 Creativity Award certificate for your essay, My Puzzle Pieces. Congratulations, Selena. Thank you. At this time, I would like to introduce the recipient of this year's Content Award, Adrian Seeger. Adrian is a junior at Brookline High School and a graduate of the Baker School. Adrian's favorite pastime is running outside. He is in fact a very speedy member of the Brookline High School track and field team. During this time away from school and friends, Adrian tries as much as he can to find happiness in small things. When the first draft of his piece, entitled Agong, ended up being 1,100 words long for this 750-word essay, Adrian was surprised to realize just how much he has to write about. After hearing about the history and connections Adrian and his Agong share, I know that everyone will join me in hoping that the 350 words Adrian had to edit out this time appear in the next chapter for us all to read. Congratulations, Adrian.
All right. Can everyone hear me properly? All right. My essay is titled Agong. After watching Grave of the Fireflies, a heart-wrenching animated film that follows the story of a boy and his younger sister struggling to survive in Japan during the final months of World War II, my mother made sure that I understood the moral of the story. Nobody wins in a war, she told me. Only recently have I been able to reflect on how exactly this history fits into my own family. I am a biracial Asian American. My mother was born and raised in Taiwan, while my Caucasian father was born and raised in America. For me, the most challenging aspect of being Asian American has been seeking knowledge about my roots in Taiwan. When I was younger, I only looked forward to eating soup dumplings, snacking on guava, and going to toy stores during trips to the island. In contrast, My more recent visits have been accentuated by tours of historical sites and museums, all in an effort to gain insight into the triumphs and perils of my mother's native homeland. In recent years, I have been particularly inspired by the stories of my grandfather, who I know by the Taiwanese term Agong. Born in Taipei in 1934, he grew up in a Japanese-governed Taiwan. The son of Japanese citizens, he spent his elementary school years learning Japanese language and culture. He was just 11 years old when World War II came to its dramatic conclusion, turning his life upside down and forcing him to re-assimilate into Taiwanese society by attending a Mandarin school. My Akong has repeatedly told me that violent conflicts never have true victors. All countries involved come away emptier than before. In recent years, I have frequently pondered the life story of my Agong and derived strength from it to help make sense of my own life. When I decided to study basic Chinese instead of advanced French in high school, I often thought of my Agong and the humiliation he must have felt when struggling to learn Mandarin rendered him a stranger in his native land. For me, being at the top of my Chinese class is never enough. I also wish to transcend barriers established by geography, politics, and culture. Whenever I visit Taiwan, reminders of the story of my Agong are everywhere. For example, I often go for runs along the Tamshui River in Taipei, where he would often go fishing during the war as a means of providing for his family. As I run, I picture him as he once was, perched on a rocky riverbank as American bombers buzzed ominously above him. I have also visited the Beitou district of Taipei. Once a mountainous refuge for my Agong during Allied bombing raids, it has now become a prime tourist destination for its hot springs. Now that stories such as his are no longer a mystery to me, my quest to draw from my family's past has taken on a new sense of urgency. After my sophomore year of high school, my family and I traveled to Taiwan and Japan. In the hallway of a hotel in Tokyo, I was pushing my Agong in his wheelchair to his hotel room while he spoke animatedly about trivial matters. Suddenly, he paused and said to me, "Adrian, this may be one of the last times left to see you." The smile I had on my face instantly fell, and I wanted to stop the wheelchair in its tracks and chastise him for saying such a thing. This was not the kind of language I wanted to hear, especially given that my mom was still battling breast cancer at the time. But I kept going, only quickening my pace a little bit and strengthening my grip on the wheelchair handles. Later on the trip, I met up with a Japanese friend who used to study at Brookline High School. The highlight of our day together was listening to my Agong tell his story to someone new with my family close by. In the background, massive windows afforded us a panoramic view of the skyline of Tokyo, a city that had risen from the ashes of the past and become an orderly, skyscraper-studded metropolis. It was then that I realized how my mixed heritage had enriched my worldview and made me privy to the true meanings of war and peace. As an Asian American, I must recognize my past, embrace the future, and then carry my heritage boldly into the highly dynamic American society I call home.
Thank you. On behalf of BAAFN and the town of Brookline, we would like to present Adrian Seeger with the 2020 Content Award certificate for your essay, Agong. Congratulations, Adrian. This year, for the very first time, we are pleased to present the New Voice Award. With this New Voice Award, we hope to honor and create space for young writers and their stories not previously represented in our essay contest. This year, we were delighted to receive several entries from students of South Asian descent. To us, these are new voices telling rich stories that add breadth and diversity to our conversation about what it means to be Asian American, and they are worthy of recognition. And so I am excited to introduce the recipient of the first New Voice Award, Rani Balakrishna. Ronnie is a junior at the Windsor School and a graduate of the Pierce School. She enjoys playing field hockey and softball and spending time with her dog. In recent weeks, she has been able to reconnect virtually with old friends and family far away, to bake and cross things off her to-do list. I'm kind of jealous here because I haven't been able to do that. In writing her essay, The Intersection of My Two Worlds, Ronnie was surprised at how much she has grown to embrace her full identity since elementary school. And she realizes that she continues to grow every day. Congratulations, Ronnie, and thank you for your voice.
The intersection of my two worlds. Indian American, two entirely different worlds separated by a single hyphen. A hyphen that functions like a switch to turn off my Indianness and to turn on my Americanness for each appropriate situation. It's a name that I am not hesitant to claim now, but I used to find it difficult to explain. For years, I struggled to explain my heritage to my friends from school. When my race crossed paths with my school friends and they would attend my dance performances or come to my house, I felt the need to explain myself and say, that's not me, but it was me. I could never finish that thought. I twisted myself into thinking that everything had to stay within its separate category and my Indian side couldn't clash with my American side. My school friends call me Ronnie and my family and family friends call me Ronnie. So why did they feel different? To a younger me, it seemed like there was a chasm between the two parts of my identity. I so badly wanted to be accepted in all walks of my life that this conflict inside of me grew gradually. One day, I decided to step out of my comfort zone. That was the day I started to take an Indian literature and history class at my high school last September. While it certainly wasn't easy being the only Indian in the class, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. In class, that meant sharing personal experiences about being Indian and also learning so much about Indian history from my non-Indian teacher that I started to think that fusing my two cultures, so to speak, was possible. Having discussions with my American classmates about India made both my heritage and nationality tie together in a way I had never thought of before. After having taken that class, I learned that the dash doesn't mean either or. It means that I am Indian and American. Born to two Indian parents at Brigham and Women's Hospital in the heart of Boston, I grew up wildly cheering on the Red Sox and happily singing prayers at Diwali parties. To me, the question that is at the forefront of the college process, who are you, comes to me very easily, but the crossover between my race and nationality has always been a blurred line. However, now when I check the Asian box on forms and on the ACT, I am much more confident in my decision to add American at the end too. As a multifaceted teenager who's constantly growing and learning in all parts of my life, the mind-blowing, for me, concept of combining both of my worlds is not the only battle I've had with my identity. Being a second-generation Indian American, I never wanted to feel too brown or become whitewashed. I try to maintain a delicate balance and never give in to a fear that I have of betraying my roots or forgetting where I come from. I have so many names that are all intertwined together. Ronnie Dondaval Krishna, Ronnie, Indian American athlete, student, aspiring journalist, leader, dog lover, sister, daughter, granddaughter, niece, and more. My mistake when I was younger was trying to separate all of the different parts of my identity and put a barrier between them. Now I know that I don't have just one name or identifier. I include all of those hyphens and descriptions because what makes me unique is everything, and I will always cherish every part of me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ronnie. On behalf of BAAFN and the town of Brookline, we present Ronnie Balakrishna with the 2020 New Voice Award Certificate for the essay, The Intersection of My Two Worlds. Congratulations, Ronnie. Our final award recipient of the evening is Elena Sue. Tonight, we present Elena with the 2020 BAAFN Award. Elena is a junior at Brookline High School and a graduate of the Heath School. She enjoys cycling, taking walks around Boston, and listening to music. While at home these past weeks, Elena has been exploring a new musical artist every day, delving into genres that she has never listened to before. Usually, when it comes to writing essays, Elena considers herself to be a huge perfectionist. She will write and rewrite everything many times before she is happy with it. When writing this piece, however, she didn't feel that way. The process was fun and pleasant, and every idea seemed to come naturally. Elena feels this is because she was writing about a topic both personal and important to her. In her essay, American Like Them, Elena's clear, crisp writing invites us into her experience with every word, and we feel lucky to be able to be so close to her longing and her learning. Congratulations, Elena. Please keep writing.
American Like Them. My childhood straddled two worlds. My upbringing was neither completely Chinese nor American, but somewhere in the nebulous space between. I ate foods from two cultures, read books in two languages, and sang the national anthems of two countries. I was enrolled in Catholic school when I was 4. I first realized that something was wrong when my teacher pulled me aside to ask me if I understood English at all. Students tugged on the corners of their eyes, asked me where my parents were from, and lined our arms side by side to compare their pale skin to my darker complexion. In school, I learned how to spell and multiply and tell nouns from adjectives and verbs. I also learned that I was different, exotic, foreign, the girl with the dark hair and dark eyes, the girl whose parents spoke flawed, accented English, the girl who wasn't American like them. Slowly, I stopped thinking of myself as American. After all, my parents didn't speak English at home. I wasn't allowed to wear shoes inside the house, and whenever I turned on the television, I couldn't see any protagonists that looked like me. All the Asian characters seemed to be doctors, computer scientists, and engineers. Eventually, I came to see American as a synonym for white. After all, I had never been told anything else. In response, I began to push my family's culture aside like it was shameful. My books of Chinese poems collected dust as I memorized verses by Frost and Longfellow. I asked for chocolate cake on my birthdays instead of the noodles that my mother painstakingly prepared for me. I stopped speaking Mandarin at home and insisted my family do the same. Even as I lost fluency in the language, I told myself that I was finally becoming truly American. This past summer, I visited China for the first time in my life. When we arrived in Beijing, the air was oppressively hot. The billboards were plastered with symbols I couldn't recognize anymore. As we drove towards the house where my mother had grown up, I felt a sudden, acute regret. I wanted to be able to trade stories with my cousins, introduce myself to the neighbors, and laugh with my grandparents over dinner. Instead, I couldn't even speak enough Mandarin to describe my own high school. I had bid to gain acceptance, but I had only ended up losing half of my identity in that process. Last August, I finally realized that my family's history is precious. My grandmother grew up during the Cultural Revolution. My mother moved overseas at 22 without knowing a word of English. My father immigrated to America so he could make enough money to support his family. Even after so many years, their bravery still inspires me to dream boldly and to pursue those dreams at all costs. If I could meet a younger version of myself, I would take her hand and tell her that her Chinese and American halves are not at war. Instead, they coexist in a delicate equilibrium. Neither is more important than the other because both are priceless. My Chinese identity will never invalidate the fact that I am just as American as anyone else. When I was 9, shy and insecure and wanting desperately to be accepted, I just wish I'd known that I was more than a bundle of stereotypes. That Asian Americans are not just doctors and engineers, but lawyers and actresses and artists. That to be Asian American is to be strong. That I don't have to be American like them. I have my own family's history and my own dreams and my own unique position at the intersection between two worlds. And that is more than enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena, that was beautiful. On behalf of BAAFN and the town of Brookline, we present Elena Sue with the 2020 BAAFN Award for the outstanding essay, American Like Them. Congratulations, Elena, and thank you all of our essay award-winning winners and participants.
Thank you, Alicia, for your presentation. Thank you to all of the award winners for sharing your touching, moving, and beautiful essays. Congratulations. That was really amazing. I'm always amazed at the depth and the beauty of the essays in this essay contest. So yeah, please accept all of our congratulations. You guys have bright futures ahead of you. So now we're going to move to the next part of our program, which is the presentation by Jessica Tang. So there's an official bio that I'm going to read to you guys before the video. But I thought I would share an unofficial introduction. About 10 years ago, I had wandered over to City Hall Plaza for a protest that was going on. I don't remember quite what the protest was about, but it wasn't an Asian American one. And this young lady comes up to me and says, you know, I'm curious, there's not a lot of Asians here. Why are you here? What inspired you to be here? And she introduced herself as a teacher in the Boston Public Schools. And we ended up talking and going to lunch. And I was so impressed by how intelligent, how passionate, how insightful she was. And I thought, this young woman is going places. And she did, because that was Jessica Tang. That was my introduction. And little did I know that she would achieve such prominence. So, official bio. Jessica Tang is the president of the Boston Teachers Union, representing 10,000 active and retired educators. She's the co-founder of the teacher activist group Boston, and she serves as a board member for several civic and labor groups, including Citizens for Public Schools and the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance. She also serves as the vice president of both the Massachusetts AFL-CIO and the American Federation of Teachers Massachusetts. She's a former co-chair of the Massachusetts Asian American Educators Association. She's also serving a 3-year term on the New England Federal Reserve Advisory Board. She earned her bachelor's from Harvard University and a master's of education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So I am very much looking forward to this presentation. So roll video.
Can you hear? Can you hear? Can everybody hear?
Well, I can't hear anything.
Andrew, we can't hear her voice. Thank you.
This is
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Tang, and I'm so sorry I'm not able to be here this evening, either in person or live, but I truly am honored to speak at this wonderful event, particularly in the context of what we as Asian Americans are going through right now, and in celebration of APA Heritage Month. Thank you very much to Shulin Chang and the entire steering committee of the Brookline Asian American Student Essay Contest for the invitation. I'd like to begin by congratulating Elena Sue, Selena Yu, Adrian Seeger, and Ronnie Balakrishna for their moving and touching essays. I see myself in each of you. Just like Adrian, I too called my grandfather Agong as the daughter of parents who were born and raised in Taiwan. I felt similar to Elena visiting China in my early 20s and wishing I were better able to read and write to communicate with my family, including great aunts and uncles who lived through the Cultural Revolution as well. And just like Selena and Ronnie, growing up, I felt like I had to compartmentalize different parts of my identity, trying to figure out the puzzle that was me, what it meant to be American, and if embracing my Asianness somehow made me less acceptable. As a teacher in Boston Public Schools, I saw many of my Asian American students struggling with this as well, and I saw myself in them too. 15 years ago, I actually wrote a spoken word piece that captures both what I experienced, what I saw, and a bit of my own experience as well. And I'd like to share that with all of you today. It's called Lost Identity. She said that she wished she were Black. She said she wished she were Black and there wouldn't be anything wrong with that, but for the fact that her skin tone glowed golden. Face shadowed sadness as I turned my mirrored gaze to search in her round, brown eyes framed by the telltale single folded eyelids. The eyes that were subject to so much scrutiny during World War II, used to differentiate between the Jap and the Chinese ally, and later used to label the gooks during the Vietnam War. The eyes that sometimes reflected so much self-hatred that surgery techniques were created to make them look more Western all across Asia, techniques I still see used today and used increasingly. These were the eyes that she wished were double folded, even rounder, with thick, long, curled lashes. Eyes that she wished didn't give away her ethnic Asian roots. I can relate to how she felt. Instead of growing up in an urban neighborhood where the majority of people are Black and brown skinned, I grew up for many years in a suburban bedroom community in the Midwest, where in my grade there were perhaps 2, maybe 3 token families of color. That made it easy to pair us up when we got to the age where adolescent crushes gave way to blushing cheeks or after a smile or nod was set in the right direction. And no matter who my crush of the week, month, or year was, I always seemed to be coupled, at least by my classmates, with Tim Wong or Kevin Lee. And even though I did share my first kiss at 11 years of age with a white boy named Judd, it stung to the bone when my friend informed me later in the year that my biggest crush of all would never be with someone who looks like you. Despite my efforts to fit in, I packed my own American lunches with bologna and cheese and made the right friends and even made the 7th grade cheerleading team. I remember thinking to myself, I wish I had blonde hair and blue eyes. And that's just how it is for so many Asian American kids who find themselves outside of certain pockets of yellow power and yellow as beautiful havens, mostly on the West Coast in Hawaii, where majority standing and common experiences more successfully shield kids from the sideways stares or perpetual foreigner status that haunt too many of us lost in communities of other colors. It is in these environs that we often have an odd faux choice to accept honorary white status and present ourselves as non-threatening, assimilating, stereotypically hardworking and deferring, promise we won't cause any trouble or inconvenience you all, good neighbors, whose food we are willing to share but culture we don't dare to impose at all. Or to define ourselves as people of color, where oftentimes the brown and Black folk you identify yourself with don't see you as another person of color or know anything of your history of oppression in this country, and the majority of people who do look like you don't identify themselves with your political beliefs either. This is where you constantly battle deep-rooted stereotypes about martial arts, female submissiveness, male asexuality, math, and, well, at least your stereotype is that you're all smart. So it is no surprise to me that this pretty girl before me, who lacks self-esteem and confidence to see her own beauty, wishes her roots were Asian and is trying to gain weight so that she can look desirably thick like many of her Black female friends. She's trying so hard to find acceptance in a society that does not appreciate her beyond the confines of an identity that others cannot seem to understand or relate to. Lost somewhere in an abyss straddling generational misunderstandings from a homeland and a home in a land where she does not feel entirely accepted, she is certainly not alone. The pressures are hard to bear, the isolation very real. When I discovered the little known fact that Asian American females have some of the highest rates of suicide for all ages and ethnicities, I was sad, but not surprised. And these are the challenges we face in a country that we know better than any other, but does not know us. Erroneously lumped together into homogenous groups since our ancestors traversed and settled the shores of the Americas in the 1500s. Yes, there are Asians in the Americas even then. Our bond is a cyclical history of exclusion, massacre, and rejection. It is also a history of resilience, defiance, and courage in the face of unrelenting injustice. Tragically, for generations of Asian American children seeking a sense of self, these stories are missing from the pages of textbooks in the memory of a nation. The contributions live on, from Bing cherries and nectarines, the heroic actions of the highly decorated but segregated 442nd Regiment, to the Transcontinental Railroad, irrigation of the West, and the legacy of Vincent Chin. This is what I needed as a young child, perplexed and unhappy with my own reflection. And this is what I began to share with the girl who wished she was something other than herself. So again, this poem I wrote 15 years ago when I first started teaching. And I wanted to share it because I felt like it actually still resonates and is true in so many ways today with a lot of the young people I meet. And I remember when I was trying to figure out my own identity in college and beyond, and reading for the first time Helen Zia's book, Asian American Dreams. And I remember reading a chapter on a plane and starting to cry. Not because the story was sad, but because for the first time, I felt like I was reading a story that I could totally relate to. It was one of the first times I felt like I was not alone in my experiences growing up. And that was powerful. Sometimes I think it can be lonely, and not seeing someone that looks like you being represented in all sorts of different roles, and subconsciously you think it may not even be possible to be something other than the very narrow of what it means to be Asian or Asian American. And truthfully, before Andrew Yang, it was hard to believe that we could ever have an Asian American president. And I may not agree with everything that he has represented, but the fact that he was running as a major candidate mattered. Why? Because as Asian Americans, we're still fighting to be truly seen, accepted, and not othered. And I've certainly experienced in my journey to become president of the Boston Teachers Union this same otherness. It was not something I intended to do, becoming president. Just becoming a teacher actually in itself was a difficult battle. I was supposed to become a doctor, a lawyer, banker, or consultant. And my parents told me, we didn't send you to Harvard to become a teacher. And it wasn't until many years later that they finally accepted my chosen passion and profession. And imagine their disappointment and alarm when I later introduced my, at that point, live-in girlfriend and came out to them that I was bisexual. They eventually came to accept that too, but being true to yourself is not always an easy path. It takes courage and conviction. It takes courage and conviction to break barriers too. Some barriers I was often in disbelief that I even had to break. Some I didn't even know that I could. Before becoming president of the Boston Teachers Union, when I was still a rank and file educator and teacher, I visited United Teachers of Los Angeles. I have a mentor there, Arlene Inouye, another APIA trailblazer herself, who invited me to visit the Union Hall. And while there, she gave me a tour, and at one point we were looking at portraits of past presidents and officers. To my surprise, there are APIA faces on the wall. And while standing there, I was then introduced to staff at UTLA, also APIA. And embarrassingly, I guess this is a theme, I burst into tears. And I burst into tears because I had just never seen an APIA face or staff member in a union hall before, in all of the halls I had visited in Massachusetts. Deep down, perhaps, I didn't think it was possible. So when I became president of our 10,000 member union, the largest local in New England, I actually became the first person of color, first openly LGBTQ, and first Asian American to become president after a long line of predominantly Irish Catholic leaders. I would subsequently become the first APIA as well as youngest member of the Mass American Federation of Teachers Board, Massachusetts AFL-CIO Board, and then the National American Federations of Teachers Executive Board as well, now serving as the second highest ranking APIA in the National Labor Union position. For most of these positions, I was joining predominantly white boards with very few people of color, and for some boards, very few women as well. Oftentimes, I find myself in spaces with white men over 50, and it took a while for me to feel like I really belonged there. While I'm proud of breaking these barriers, it is both disturbing to me that I'm the first and that I still have to deal with all sorts of isms in my role. The VP of president, or my vice president, I'm sorry, of my union is an older white man, and oftentimes in meetings, others assume he is the one in charge. One time I was even mistaken as an admin assistant. And these are the barriers we are still working to break down today as we simultaneously demand acceptance, not only as Asian Americans in different fields and roles, but also in our intersectional identities. Whether it be as young people, women, queer, gender, nonconforming, each of us is not just one identity, but many. And it is up to us to own that and be proud of each part of us. And it is through the recognition of intersectionality and the many facets of who we are as individuals in a society that we be able to organize and upend in systemic ways that groups, including Asian Americans, are oppressed. And it's up to us to also to recognize the ways in which we have also both benefited from anti-Black racism and also from civil rights fights to fight racism led by Black Americans, Indigenous, and Latinx communities as well. If we are to defeat anti-Asian racism, we must defeat all types of racism. We can't pick and choose. And if we do not educate ourselves and each other about our shared oppression and struggle for equity and justice, then we have lost our way. As one of my sheroes, Grace Lee Boggs, shared, we need to discern who we are and expand on our humanness and sacredness. That's how we change the world, which happens because we will be the change. As we are in a moment of time in which I believe and hope our country is at a historic crossroads in which we'll go the right path, we must continue to break barriers, imagine a world, and fight for it. Grace Lee Boggs also taught us that people are aware that they cannot continue in the same old way, but are immobilized because they cannot imagine an alternative. We need a vision that recognizes that we are at one of the great turning points in human history when the survival of our planet and the restoration of our humanity require a great sea of change in our ecological, economic, political, and spiritual values. Owning our identities and seeing our humanity in others is part of breaking the barriers that will enable the change we need in this world. I see me in you, and you in me, and you are not alone. So thank you so much again to everyone, and congratulations to this year's essay winners and to everyone for being a part of this wonderful celebration during APA Heritage Month. Thank you.
Shilan, you're muted.
Am I okay now?
Yeah.
She is something, isn't she? I am so looking forward to her next steps at plural. I mean, I am almost 70 years old, but if I had a daughter, boy, do I wish she were my daughter. Anyway, thank you so much to the four of you. Elena, Selena, Ronnie, and Adrian. Over the last 5 years, I think we have collected close to 100 essays now. And my personal dream has been to publish them because each and every one is different, but at the same time, there's a thread that is common. And it teaches a certain lesson, which is basically that, you know, even if you say something once, it's just not gonna work. We have to keep on saying it. And we've been saying it for so many years. I remember when I was a high school student, I remember writing something like this, and it just shows 60 years later, things haven't changed that much. So we're counting on the four of you. and all of the other essay writers that are in the audience today, probably, to keep talking, to keep thinking, and to keep voicing what you think for us. Now, we wouldn't have this event if it were not for the generosity of our sponsors. I believe 5 years ago, we started off with prizes of $25, and now we are at $500. So I really want, I don't know whether it's possible, but at the end, I would like to put up their names. We would like to thank the Brookline Dental Center, Neda Shah Hosseini and Fahim Rasool, the dentist Robert Goon and Associates, our very loyal judge and supporter, John Hodgman, the Brookline Community Foundation, Stoked Pizza, although we didn't get the pizza, we'll go and collect it later, probably. The Brookline Teen Center, where we usually have our event. And the Brookline Booksmith, who had offered a bonus gift certificate because they thought that all of you are probably having a harder time these days, cloistered at home. Well, the winners, the 4 winners don't get this, but these were for all the other participants. And then Brookline Frames, and also Golden Temple. We want to thank Caitlin Haynes, who has been so helpful to us over the last 5 years in organizing this event. We also have a special thank you for Andrew Leung, who is Chi Chi Wu's beloved husband. Thanks to him, we have this platform tonight and are able to celebrate, although hopefully next year it will be in person with everybody else. So thank you. I hope that you enjoyed the evening, and we'll see you again next year. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have a message for Stephanie Fan, who wanted to express her appreciation and clap, clap, clap for all of the speakers and organizers.
Oh, that's very nice of her. Thank you, Stephanie. Be safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
We'll see you next year.
Bye. Thank you, Shalon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Gigi.
Sheila.
Thanks, Alicia.